think for a very long time NATO sort of had the monopoly over European defense. And for the last 15 years, the EU was mostly involved in security, both within Europe, for instance, in the Western Balkans, or outside of our continent, mostly in Africa. But lately, the European Union, mostly through initiatives from the European Commission, has decided to get more serious about defense and to provide new tools for cooperation. This is mostly about funding common procurements of capabilities. And I think this is where the line between security and defense is getting a bit blurred. The EU is getting involved in defense, but mostly through helping countries to cooperate in buying capabilities, in building better cooperation and interoperability. And my second remark would be that common security and defense are also getting blurred because the threats are getting blurred. When you think about terrorism, it's not only an external threat, it's also an internal threat. So it's harder to have a clear division of labor between the EU and NATO. They are working on it, but I think increasingly we're going to see both involved in security and defense. And I think, for instance, hybrid threats or cybersecurity is a field where they can work together. Yes, so I think that building mutual education is very important because although the two organizations are in the same city, they don't really know each other very well. And they don't work together as well as we wish that they did. So I think some very simple and practical steps would be, for instance, for NATO to have a liaison officer in the EU, for EU and NATO staff to share briefings, to work together in trainings, to try and have joint approaches to certain problems. And one example, when we think about capability development plan, NATO has had its own plan for years, and now the EU is launching a new common annual review of defense. And the goal here would be for EU and NATO to try and coordinate the programs so that capability gaps identified at the NATO level and at the EU level could lead member states and allies to take them into account in both organizations. And that would be very practical steps for EU staff and NATO staff to work together. I think it's definitely not a threat. It's making it more complex because you need to work with many different actors and many different organizations. So you would have the EU and NATO as the two main umbrellas for security and defense, and then sub-regional organizations like the Visegrad Group, the Nordic Defense Group, and also organizations that are aimed at cooperation on armament, like OCA or ITAC, for instance. I think it's, first of all, it's the result of history. It's the result of sort of historical developments and needs, and I think it can be a chance if managed better, if coordinated better. And the biggest problem of European security is the lack of interoperability. Each country has a different model of planes, and it's hard to sort of land your plane or helicopter to someone else. So maybe building more bridges between those organizations would be a way to actually make use of this patchwork and make use of all these initiatives at the European level, which are actually quite an asset, I think.